These notes are from Module K, Unit 1, Lesson 1. Each lesson begins with a list of the learning targets for that lesson. The learning targets for this lesson are: I can explain what science is. That's what we've been practicing all week. I can explain the difference between a theory and a law. We worked on this learning target when we completed the lab in class using indirect evidence and the film canisters. And the third learning target is I can explain the two methods scientists use to obtain empirical evidence. We'll learn more about that today. Then each lesson includes vocabulary words. In this lesson, there are 3 vocabulary words. The first one is empirical evidence. Empirical evidence includes observations and measurements people gather and test to support and evaluate scientific explanations. In class, we practice looking up these definitions on Think Central, our science website, and this is the definition we agreed on in class. Basically, empirical evidence includes all of the information scientists collect when they're researching. It could come from a survey, it could come from a scientific experiment. Empirical evidence includes scientists' observations and research that they've done from places like scientific journals. The second vocab word is a theory. A theory is a well-supported explanation of nature. And the third vocab word is a law. A law is a description of what happens in nature that is true anywhere in the universe at any time it's been tested. Theory and law were also covered in the Powtoon, and if you would like to watch that video to review, you can find it linked both on Schoology and also in Edpuzzle. Then in class we watched a video called What is Science? You can view that video on Edpuzzle, and it's also linked on Schoology. The first question in the note says, what do scientists do? We came up with a long list in class, and I asked students to record at least 2 of the things that we named in class. Some of the things scientists do include observing, gathering information, answering questions, and explaining why things happen. The second question in the notes is, what type of evidence do scientists collect? The answer is empirical evidence. All of the information scientists gather is considered empirical evidence. So in class last week, when you completed the 2 labs, all of the data you recorded on your lab sheets is considered empirical evidence. Also in the video clip, What is Science?, we were introduced to 5 fields of science. The first field of science we'll look at is chemistry. A chemist is a scientist who studies how atoms behave with other atoms. They work with the periodic table, which contains a list of all of the unique elements, which are made up of unique types of atoms that are found in the world. An astronomer is someone who studies objects in space. The field of astronomy looks at everything in outer space: planets, the moon, the solar system, stars. Biology is a field of science that studies plant and animal life. That prefix bio means living, and ology means study of. So a study of living things. Biologists study everything from the smallest single-celled organisms all the way up to human beings, which are the most complex organisms on Earth. Geology is a field of science that studies the things that form Earth. So a geologist works with things like rocks and the Earth's plates that move and shift to cause earthquakes. Geologists often work for oil companies or mining companies, helping them figure out where to dig and how deep to dig to find the things they're looking for beneath Earth's surface. And then physics is the study of matter and energy. So a physicist might study force, motion, light, or sound. The 6th grade science class you're taking is a physical science class, so it includes both chemistry and physics. 7th grade science is a life science, so you'll be studying biology next year. 8th grade science is earth science, so that's geology. Your 9th grade science class will be a physical science class again. 10th grade is usually biology. And then in high school, you have some other options, including specific chemistry and physics classes. It's possible to go into smaller fields within these fields of science as well. For example, marine biology is a type of biology that only studies living things that are found in water. Earlier last week, we talked about the difference between a law and a theory, and we agreed that our class definition for a law is a statement that summarizes what happens in nature. What is the key word? The example we used is the law of gravity. The law of gravity tells me that when I hold my arm out and I release that marker, like I did so many times in class, what will happen? The marker will fall every time. No matter where I stand in the classroom, no matter what time of day, no matter what semester, no matter what year, when I release the marker, it will fall to the ground. A theory, on the other hand, explains how or why something happens in nature. Theories are also backed by a huge amount of evidence, just like laws, so they're developed after repeated experiments. And the example we used in class is atomic theory, which helps me understand how atoms interact with other atoms, what they're made up of, and why they react and bond the way they do. And then a hypothesis is a testable idea that leads to an experiment. Sometimes we use the words hypothesis and theory interchangeably, but they're very different. A hypothesis is something that comes before an experiment, and a theory is a statement that's been proven after repeated experiments. Science is a cycle. This looks a little different in your notes. It's written out more across the page. The idea that I want you to see here is that in science, scientists make observations, and after observing the things around them for a while, they develop a hypothesis, their prediction about why they're seeing what they're seeing. They test that hypothesis in an experiment, and if it is proven true, they repeat that experiment multiple times to see if they continue getting the same results. When that happens, they've gotten repeated results that are the same from multiple experiments. Then they develop a theory that explains how or why that thing they're seeing is occurring. And once they have a theory, like the theory of evolution or atomic theory, scientists continue to make new observations. That's happening, for example, with the theory of evolution. Just this past week, remains were found that are believed to belong to an organism that would have been a predecessor to human beings. And these remains are believed to belong to a species that hadn't previously been found before. So there's new observations and new evidence to support that theory. One key piece of information here is that scientists do not always agree, and that's a really good thing. When people don't agree, they debate, they look at all of the evidence, and they work together to come to a conclusion. Because scientists don't always agree, they are able to debate and look at the information, and science continues to grow as a result. Then there are two ways that scientists obtain information. We've talked about both of these in class. We just need to record the names. Scientists obtain their information either in the field by making observations. The field might be a school cafeteria or the African safari or a forest in northern Minnesota. The second place a scientist could obtain information is in the lab. Then they're doing a controlled experiment, which is something we will learn more about in the next lesson as we talk about the scientific method. So again, that last learning target, two ways scientists obtain information are fieldwork or lab work. Another way to say that is observation and experimentation.